The restaurant buzzed with quiet chatter and soft music, but at table 12, time seemed to stop. A young waitress, her hands trembling slightly, stood before an elegant older woman dressed in white silk. The woman was deaf, her eyes, kind but distant, scanning the waitress's face in confusion. The waitress, named Naomi, swallowed hard. She had seen the woman before, the mother of billionaire tech mogul Elliot Carson, a man known for his ruthlessness in business and his arrogance in public life. But Naomi didn't see power or wealth at that table. She saw loneliness. And so, with trembling fingers, Naomi began to sign. The entire restaurant froze. No one had ever seen a waitress communicate in sign language with a billionaire's family member before. The older woman's eyes widened and softened, and soon tears began to fall, quietly, gently, as if decades of silence had just been broken by the kindness of a stranger. When Elliot walked in moments later, he didn't understand why his mother was crying, nor why this shy black waitress was sitting beside her, holding her hands as if she'd known her forever. But what happened next, his reaction, his discovery, and what it revealed about both of them, would leave the entire room and later the world in tears. Because this was not just a story about a waitress and a billionaire's mother. It was a story about empathy, race, silence, and a language that binds humanity beyond words. Naomi Carter had grown up in the quiet corners of Atlanta's South Side, a neighborhood where laughter often masked hardship, and dreams were whispered, not shouted. Her mother had been a school janitor, her father a mechanic, and from them Naomi had inherited two things: a deep sense of humility and an unbreakable will to serve others with kindness. But Naomi had something else, a gift that few knew about. When she was 14, she befriended a deaf boy named Marcus from her church. Everyone ignored him. They'd smile politely, but never bothered to truly communicate. Naomi couldn't stand the thought of someone being locked out of conversation, so she learned sign language on her own. Late at night, under a dim lamp, watching free videos on a borrowed phone. Years later, at 24, Naomi was working as a waitress at the Velvet Spoon, one of Atlanta's most exclusive restaurants. The kind of place where millionaires order with arrogance and tip with pity. Naomi kept to herself, quiet and diligent, her presence barely noticed except for her warm smile. She was the kind of worker who remembered birthdays, allergies, and favorite drinks, yet never drew attention to her own struggles. And she had many. Her younger sister was ill, a degenerative hearing condition slowly taking her sound away. Naomi worked double shifts, saving every dollar for the experimental treatment that might preserve her sister's hearing. She never complained, never asked for sympathy. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. A reservation under the name Carson appeared on the list. Private dining, table 12. The staff buzzed with tension. Everyone knew the name. Elliot Carson, CEO of Carver Technologies, billionaire philanthropist, and one of America's youngest Fortune 500 executives. But the reservation wasn't for him. It was for his mother, Margaret Carson, who was famously deaf. No one wanted to take the table. The staff whispered about how intimidating she was, how awkward it would be to serve her without being able to communicate. Naomi volunteered. Quietly, simply, when she approached Margaret's table. She noticed how the older woman avoided everyone's gaze, her posture poised yet isolated. Naomi gently placed a menu down and saw the woman's eyes dart uncertainly, scanning lips she couldn't read. Naomi's heart clenched. She recognized that look, and that was when she lifted her hands, slowly, and signed. Margaret froze. For a brief moment, the bustling restaurant disappeared. The woman blinked, uncertain if she had seen correctly. Then Naomi repeated the sign, with perfect precision. The transformation was instant. The stiffness in Margaret's posture melted away. She smiled, not politely, but genuinely, her entire face lighting up with a warmth Naomi had never seen. Margaret signed back, hesitantly. "You know sign language?" Naomi nodded, her hands moving fluently. "A little. I learned because my friend was deaf." For the first time in months, Margaret engaged freely. She laughed silently, shared small stories through her signs, and even asked Naomi about her own life. Naomi, ever humble, avoided talking about herself and focused on Margaret's comfort. But others noticed. The manager, the chef, the entire dining room. Patrons whispered, astonished to see this quiet waitress, a young black woman from the lower end of town, communicating so gracefully with one of the wealthiest women in the state. When Elliot Carson finally arrived, late and irritated, he expected another awkward lunch. His mother rarely enjoyed public outings due to her hearing loss. But this time, he found her glowing, laughing in signs, hands fluttering with expressive joy. And across from her sat Naomi, smiling softly, signing back. He stopped cold. Who was this waitress? He sat down, confused, watching his mother's joy turn into tears. Margaret signed something quickly to Naomi, who smiled gently, nodding. Elliot demanded an explanation from the manager, but before anyone could answer, Margaret grabbed her son's wrist and began signing rapidly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Naomi stepped back respectfully, not wanting to intrude, but everyone could see the emotion pouring between mother and son. The billionaire, who was known for his stone-cold demeanor, suddenly looked small, fragile, and utterly human. Later that evening, when the restaurant quieted and Margaret left, Elliot lingered. He approached Naomi privately, his voice low but stern, asking how she knew his mother's language. Naomi explained simply that she had learned it out of empathy, that she wanted to make people feel seen. Elliot didn't respond. He just nodded curtly and left. Naomi thought that was the end of it, just a brief human connection in a cold world. But she was wrong. The next day, the Velvet Spoon received a call. Naomi was asked to serve a private dinner at the Carson estate. She hesitated. She wasn't used to stepping into rich people's homes. But curiosity and the need for extra money convinced her. When she arrived, the mansion loomed like a museum, pristine, silent, intimidating. But inside, she found warmth. Margaret greeted her like an old friend, signing joyfully. Elliot observed from a distance, studying Naomi. Over the next weeks, Naomi was invited back repeatedly, sometimes to interpret, sometimes just to share tea. She learned that Margaret had lost her hearing at 30 due to an illness and had since withdrawn from most of society. Naomi's gentle signing reignited something in her, a connection she'd lost even with her own son. Elliot, despite his wealth, struggled with guilt. He had built empires, but never learned to truly hear his own mother. Watching Naomi interact with her made him question everything, his privilege, his blindness, his own heart. Yet not everyone saw Naomi's kindness with grace. Some tabloids twisted the story. Billionaire's mother befriends Waitress. Gold digger rumors swirl. Others mocked her online. At the restaurant, jealous co-workers whispered that Naomi was playing pity for promotion. Naomi endured it silently, focusing on what mattered, Margaret's happiness, and the savings for her sister's treatment. But then, Margaret collapsed one morning. Naomi rushed to the hospital the moment she heard. Margaret had suffered a mild stroke. Elliot was already there, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Doctors said her condition was stable, but she might lose partial movement in her hands, the very tool she used to communicate. Naomi stood at the door, unsure she was welcome. Elliot looked up and motioned her in. For once, the arrogance was gone. Margaret's fingers twitched weakly as Naomi held her hand. Slowly, painfully, the older woman tried to sign. Naomi leaned close, reading the fragmented gestures. "Promise me. You'll keep signing. Don't stop using your gift." Tears blurred Naomi's vision. She nodded firmly, signing back, "I promise." In the weeks that followed, Naomi visited daily. She became more than a waitress. She became a companion, a caretaker, and a bridge between a mother and a son learned to understand one another again. Elliot began taking sign language lessons in secret, surprising Naomi one afternoon by greeting her with an imperfect but heartfelt sign. "Thank you." For Naomi, it was enough. But fate had one more twist. During a press event for his company's new accessibility technology, Elliot shared a personal story about how his mother's silence had shaped him and how one young waitress had reminded him of humanity behind innovation. He didn't name her, but the story went viral. When reporters uncovered her identity, Naomi's life changed overnight. Donations flooded for her sister's treatment. Advocacy groups reached out. And in a stunning move, Elliot's company announced a scholarship in her name, the Naomi Carter Fund for Hearing Access and Inclusion. But that wasn't the emotional peak. The true moment came when Margaret, now partially recovered, attended the ceremony. Naomi stood beside her as Elliot gave his speech. Halfway through, he paused and turned toward his mother and signed the rest of his message fluently. Margaret burst into tears. The audience followed, and then he turned to Naomi. "You taught me to listen without ears." The applause seemed endless. Months later, Naomi returned to the Velvet Spoon, not as a waitress, but as a guest of honor. Her story had spread worldwide, inspiring millions about the power of empathy across race, class, and ability. Yet Naomi never let the attention change her. She still lived humbly, caring for her sister, volunteering at a deaf community center every weekend. Fame, she believed, was fleeting, but kindness, that stayed. One evening, as she locked up the center after class, she found a letter waiting on the table. The handwriting was neat, familiar. It was from Margaret. "Naomi, you didn't just teach me communication. You taught me connection. Because of you, my son and I understand each other again. I thought silence was my prison, but you showed me it could also be peace. Keep signing. Keep shining. With love, Margaret Carson." Naomi pressed the letter to her chest, tears falling freely. For a girl who had once felt invisible, she had become the voice for thousands who could not speak. And perhaps that was a quiet miracle of it all. That shy waitress, once dismissed because of her skin color and her station, had reminded the world that compassion doesn't need sound, just sincerity.